All right, so I am here with my group members, Angelica and Gabby, and I'm Brittany, and we're going to be talking about the interdisciplinary team meeting that took place for the patient Abby. So, Gabby, can you tell me what your impressions were of the team meeting?
Yeah, so initially I liked how the MD kind of ran or led the meeting and let everyone introduce themselves so everyone got a chance to know who each individual was. I thought each individual gave decent input. I thought the physical therapist and the occupational therapist did give a little bit more than the other team members. But I thought it was overall a really good split between all of the members there. Did you have any input on the team members?
Yes, I agree with what you said. I think generally the team meeting went really well, and they were able to come to a consensus and a plan about what needed to be done, what needed to be ordered, how all the factors that needed to come into play in terms of the discharge. So I think um, them being able to communicate helped them get there. But I do agree. I think the OT and PT did have a lot more to say as compared to like the psychologist and the nurse.
Yeah, so what would you say was like the main role of the physical therapist? Like what kind of input was being said from the physical therapist?
I think the physical therapist had a lot to say in terms of like their mobility status, the amount of assist that the patient needed for certain transfers, and recommendations as far as how much longer they needed to stay in the hospital, and recommendations for DME. I know she referenced the wheelchair and mentioning that to the case manager. So, yeah, mainly like assist level and the equipment that they needed.
Yeah, I agree with Angelica. I think the PT brought a lot to the table. They shared stuff that pertained to their skill set, such as the patient's current level of function, that she's not yet at her prior level of function, how she's been responding to treatment. And she relayed that with the whole team. And for example, with the MD, she had told them that they're experiencing orthostatic hypotension. And the MD was quick to be like, okay, well, maybe we can like improve her hydration and also change her medication. So I think the PT did a really good job of explaining, where the patient is at currently and why she doesn't think they're ready to go home yet.
To bounce off of that, so we discussed the role of PT. What do you think, or what did you notice about the role of the OT?
I noticed that she was particularly interested in the family dynamic and how the parents were not together, and that it was important to determine in which parent that Abby was going home with. She said how the parents were arguing, and I think that was important to mention to make sure that Abby gets home to a safe environment and make sure that she can continue on her physical therapy at home.
Yeah, I think the OT was interesting. She suggested at one point to kind of send the patient home and have them kick it in, which I think the PT did a really good job of handling that suggestion in how she stood her ground and kind of restated, like, no, I don't think the patient's ready yet, but she didn't really put down the OT's idea. And then also, like Gabby had mentioned, I think the OT was very interested in the family dynamic. She didn't really share too much about her interaction with the patient and where they stood as far as ADLs, which is something that I think we would want to know for the patient. But she did bring up the family dynamic and brought that awareness to the PT and the case manager. They weren't aware about two different households and two different environments and equipment that the patient could potentially need because of that.
I agree. I think towards the end of the meeting, she didn't really spend a lot of time mentioning ADLs, but she did mention how the patient wanted to return back to end of the year school activities and the accessibility for that. So I think that was a important thing that she was able to mention and have on the other professionals' radar.
Yeah, so
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
sorry, going off of that, how do you think like overall the team dynamics like might affect the outcome for this patient?
That's a good question. I think initially it kind of sounded like everyone was on a different page, but I think this meeting was really good to see, the doctor thought they were ready to go home, but then the PT was like, I don't think so. The OT was saying, let's just do it. So I think it was really good for everyone to get on the same page and see the collaboration. Whereas psych was saying, I think we need to work with her a little more and make sure she's in the right mindset. PT was saying she's not at the prior level of function. MD was ready to change her what they could change, like medications, fluids. And then the case manager also was talking about getting multiple sets of equipment if possible. So I think the team dynamic was very good after this meeting. I think prior to it, you could probably see that there wasn't good communication because everyone was kind of on a different page.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Angelica, do you have anything to add before we wrap this meeting up?
I would agree with Brittany. I think there was definitely some conversation that wasn't really on the same page in terms of PT and OT. I would have liked to see what nursing had to say about discharge, but I do like how they all came to a consensus at the end. And I also like their communication with the case manager, because although they would like to recommend, 2 weeks more, it really all depends on insurance and what's allowed and what they can get for them. So I really liked how they were able to all communicate and kind of figure out what the plan is.